Hey guys, welcome back, and today we'll be looking at another part of the course, and that's going to be valuation. So far what we have done is we have basically looked at the introduction to derivatives, types of derivatives, the derivative markets, how the derivatives operate, the future and the forward pricing and stuff like that. Alright, so let's jump right away and look at the next section of the course. So remember, it's a very short course on derivatives. It's basically to acquaint you with the sort of the derivative market in general, and what are the instruments and stuff like that. So let's look at the next part of the part 2 of the course. So let's look at what is valuation. And when I talk about valuation, I mean valuation with respect to the options valuation. So there are two types of option valuation method, largely. So one is the binomial and the other one is the Black-Scholes valuation. So first we are going to be looking at what is a binomial valuation, and then sort of like what are the assumptions used and how practical it is in a real sense, and then we'll be sort of like moving on to Black-Scholes and stuff like that. All right, so let's look at what is binomial. Binomial is basically a risk neutral method for valuing path dependent options. To be frank, it doesn't have much application in the real world because of the assumptions involved, and the biggest one being the risk neutrality. The markets in general are not risk neutral. There is a certain amount of risk in everything, in every asset class you invest. So that's the biggest assumption here, and that's kind of a thing which is not going in with the real world. So basically, under this model, the value of an option is equal to the present value of the probability adjusted future payoffs. Now what I mean by the probability adjusted future payoffs is basically we will be looking at in the next slide. So let's look at here. So in this slide, I've just skipped one slide so that I can explain you this, and then we can get back to how do we sort of like calculate these things. So all right, so let's look at this. So option valuation here is coming from whatever you see here, 56.24, and then from here it is coming to 50. All right, so that's how you have to sort of like calculate. So if you see here, there's two leg to everything. So from 50 it is basically going to 52 or 58. It could go either ways, either it could go to 52 or it could go to 48, and from 52 it could go to 54 or 49. So in a way that you can see that there are three legs to it. So from 0, which is today, it's like sort of like it can go up down, and from 52 it can go again up down, from 54 it can go up down. What we are trying to essentially do is from here, if we think it's going to be up, from here we are going to calculate a present value. So we will bring this to 50, so which is basically today. So in time terms, it is we have to bring everything to today. So that's what basically the funda here is. The premise is why it is called binomial, because there are two paths an option value can take from today after a certain period of time. So it can either go up or either come down. All right, and then again from there it can go up or it can come down. So that's where this things comes into picture. All right, let's go back a slide and look at the formulas for calculating the option value with using the binomial method. As I said earlier, it is not a very practical method, and that's because it's based on certain assumptions, and those assumptions are not actually a real world assumption. So it's just for the educational purpose that there's a valuation process which can be used to value options as well. So the first step is to I've sort of like divided these in step 1, step 2, and step 3, and then there is sub step 1, sub step 2, and sub step 3. So basically there's only one step there in 3. So yeah, so let's look at the step 1 of the first thing which you need to be doing. So you have to basically calculate the U or the D factor. Now what I mean by the U or the D factor is basically, when I say U, I mean to say 52, and when I say D, I mean to say 48. So all right, so up or the down factor, for example, if it's a current stock price at 100 and it's expected to go to 120, then the U is going to be 1.2, which is basically the price expected upon the current price. All right, so the current stock price is at 100, it is expected to go at 120, so the U factor is going to be 1.2, and this can be also written as U is S by S. All right, so in the same way you have to sort of like calculate the D factor, which is again 80 by 100, because we are expecting that the stock price is going to go down, and then also calculate the probabilities of going up or down, which can be basically calculated as the probability as 1 plus T times R. T is nothing but the time to maturity, and R is the risk free rate of return. risk-free rate of return is nothing but the 90 days G-Sex, which is prevalent in the market. So that minus the D and divided by U minus D, U and the D factor we have already calculated. So the probability will be in the picture, and then calculate the C plus or C minus, which is the call option payout. C plus is SU minus the exercise price. SU is what? The current stock price times the probability, the U factor, I'm sorry, the U factor minus the exercise price, and times the exercise price is basically denoted by PX, and the C minus, which is 0, or SD minus the exercise price. So SD is nothing but the stock price times the D factor. Now applying the formula for calculating the call option would be C plus is nothing but, we have calculated C plus is 0 or SU minus exercise price, and C plus times P, and then P is calculated like here, this is the probability, and plus C minus times 1 minus P. The whole expression should be divided by 1 plus R raised to N. So we are trying to bring the value to the present value, and that's why we are sort of like dividing it. So in this way we'll be able to get the values of the option. So now let's get back to the Excel and try this scenario. So let's look at the Excel sheet. These are the equations which I have borrowed from the slide. So basically this is the first equation, which sort of like calculates the probability of the up and the down movements, and this is the final equation to calculate the call option value. Now before we begin, let me just tell you the basis of this calculation. So first off is that we are in the process of calculating a call option, the value of a call option, and we have assumed it to be a European call option, and the stock price is we have assumed it to be 50 with an increase in the stock price as 4% up and 4% down. So yeah, so let's just get back to this particular diagram here which I have, and then we can look in the calculation part later on. Essentially what we are trying to do is, from this period we are trying to come back to today, which is period 0. So here what I've done is I have created a 3-period nodal diagram for binomial option, and essentially calculate the payoffs of all of these values, and then sort of like discount them back to the present value. So it's a 3-period nodal diagram, but then what I've done is, to keep things simple, I'm just calculating the 1-period nodal diagram. So when I say nodes, I mean to say that D5 is a node. This is a node. Let me just color code this so that it gets easier for you to follow. So this is a node, again this is a node, and then again this is a node, this is a node, this is a node, and this is a node. If there would have been a different period, like a 4th period, then this or all 4 cells would become a node. All right, so essentially we are trying to figure out the payoffs of all of this, and discount them back to the present value. So for the purposes of understanding, or for the purposes of this video, what I've done is I've just taken a single period. So we'll be focusing on 50, 52 and 48. That's it. All right, so the first thing we need to be doing is to calculate the up factor and the down factor, which I've just calculated here. So up factor is nothing but the expected up movement by the current stock price, so that is 1.04, and again the down factor is 0.96, which is the expected down price to the current stock price. Now we have also assumed that the strike price of the call option is going to be 51. So if the strike price is 51, are we going to exercise the option here? That's correct. Yes, we'll be doing it because the stock price is at 52. So remember, if the strike price is below the stock price for a call option, then we will exercise it. But for example, if it would have been a put option, then we wouldn't have exercised it, because for a put option, it would have been an option which is worthless. All right, so let's look at the calculation part here. What are these factors? So what I've essentially done is I want to calculate first the probabilities of stock price moving to 52 and stock price moving to 48. So I've just divided this whole equation in small expressions. So this first is the T, which is nothing but the time to maturity. So we are just focusing on 1 month period, so that's the reason why I've taken it as 30 by 365. Then the interest rate. Now this is an assumed interest rate of 8%, which is an annual interest rate. Okay, to get to a monthly interest rate, what I've done is I've multiplied this interest rate with the time period, so to get a monthly interest rate. All right, and then 1 plus T times R, which is 1.006575, which is this factor, basically this expression, and then minus the D, which is nothing but the D factor, and again this whole thing divided by U minus D, which is the up and the down factor. So the probability of going up comes out to be J12, which is nothing but the 1 plus T times R minus D upon U minus D. So we get the probability as 0.582192. Now if the probability, so if you have the probability of up factor, then you can easily calculate the probability of going down by just subtracting this number by 1. So once you do that, you have the value or the probability of the down factor, which is like 0.4178, which is basically the probability of the stock price going down. Once this is out of the way, what we need to be essentially doing is we need to calculate the payoffs. So here, as you can see, this is a call option. If the stock price is at 52, it is definite that we'll be exercising the call option, because the call option gives us the right to buy the stock at 51, right? And there's a 1 rupee or a $1 benefit. So that's where, we will be exercising it, and the payoff is going to be this much. Like strike price is 51 and the stock price is 52. So stock price minus the strike price, which is 1, okay, $1 or 1 rupee, whatever. Now coming back to this point, if the stock price would have moved down to 48, will we be exercising the call option? No, right? Because the call option is worthless, because the call option gives us the right to buy the stock at 51. Why would you want to buy the stock at 51, which is when the stock is already at 48? Doesn't make sense, right? So the call option in this case is going to be worthless. So that's what C minus is going to be. C minus payoff is going to be 0. C plus payoff is going to be 1. Now we need to bring this 1 from time period 1 to time period 0. So we are essentially trying to calculate the present value of 1. Now look at the call option value. Here I've just used the whole values, but it doesn't make sense, because J22 and J18, so anything multiplied by 0 is 0 only, right? So this expression goes 0, and this expression is only 1, and divide by 1 plus J8 raised to J10. This is the formula which I'm using here. All right, C plus times P. C plus is 1. 1 times probability of 1 is a probability of U is 0.582192. So 1 times 1 is 1 times 0.582192 is 0.582192. Then C minus is 0. 0 times the down probability is 0. So essentially what we're doing is we are taking this value and calculating the present value of this value. We have to also multiply this by the probability, right? The probability of going up is 0.58. So we have to multiply this by 0.58 to get the actual value or the actual earned money which we will be getting. And at the end of the period 0, we have to discount it to the present value. Now that's what I've done here. Only this part is remaining here. So we have talked about C plus times P. We have talked about C minus times 1 minus P, which is nothing but the down probability. Now this whole thing divided by 1 plus R raised to N. Just remember here that if we're talking about a period like a 30 days period, then we have to also adjust the R, like the rate of return. So this is the annual rate of return and this is the monthly rate of return. So to keep things simple, that's what I've done here. So T times R is the monthly rate of return. Here what we have done is 1 plus T times R, which is 1 plus basically R raised to N. So I think J10 is a wrong cell, because that's basically 1 plus J8. So what we need to be doing is we have to adjust this to N. N is what? The time, and that is at J4. This is the one. Okay, so raised to 4. So 1 plus R raised to N, right? N is the time period. There we go. So this is what final value of the call option. So 0.581878. The initial payoff was 0.582192. As you can see here, if you compare these two values, 0.582192 is greater than 0.581878. So we have essentially discounted it back to the present value, and this is what the call option value is. So in the same way, if we would have had 2 period nodal structure, then essentially we would have had to calculate the payoff of this and this, and then this and this. Essentially there would be like 4 payoffs, 2 from this and 2 from this, and in that way you have to discount them back to the present value. So if we look at this method, what we have to essentially calculate to make this more practical is, in the real world there's no European option, there is only American options. When we talk about American options, it can be exercised at any point during the 30 days time period, and in that ways you can create like number of nodes there. From day 1 to day 30 you can create 30 nodes, or you can create minute by minute nodes. So just imagine the amount of calculation it would take to the actual option value, and that is a point where whole binomial thing gets impractical. So you can create second by second node, or you can create minute by minute node. That's where the calculation sort of gets very complex. So after 1 minute, what's going to be the stock price? By doing that, you can create like multiple nodes, and just imagine the kind of calculation you will have to do so to come up to the option value. These are the kind of limitations for binomial, because first is there's no European option, the underlying stock price, and there are brokerage charges which reduce your payoffs rather, and these are the kind of things which we'll have to take care of during option valuation. Next up, we'll be looking at the second method of valuing options, which is the Black-Scholes method. The Black-Scholes method is more practical in a way that, you know, in the real world, everybody uses to calculate the option pricing and to calculate the volatility or any other variables which are embedded in that. If you have the current option price, you can calculate the other factors like the volatility or some stuff like that. So I hope you have enjoyed this video, and bye for now, and see you in the next set of videos.